Yolanda's fridged!
I'll
I just want to make that point.
Fridging is specifically for male characters.
That's bullshit!
Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 11 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasonowski, and I am the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire.
The polls that we're going to be tackling this week are going to be Titans Beast World number 5, Beast World Tour, Star City, Green Arrow number 8, Invasive 2, and the highly anticipated Ghost Machine number 1.
And our back issue review for the week is going to be Rain, the graphic novel adaptation of Joe Hill's novella of the same name by David Booher and Zoe Thorogood.
Yep, and if you like what you hear here today, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. Or you can find me at my personal socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm on all socials at Katie Markham Pro.
Now, onto the news. So our first little bit of news for the day comes at us from friend of the channel, Nicholas Mueller, who has revealed that Antarctic Press will be publishing Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter as a mini-series hitting comic shops this summer. So if you are unaware of kind of the if you're unaware of kind of the situation that had unfolded with Antarctic Press, Nick and Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter, and another book called Canada Bear. Nick's book had been solicited for Manga Z18. We had promoted it on this channel multiple times. And then when you got the book, inside it was Canada Bear, misattributed to Nick instead of the rightful creators. We'll have everybody linked in the description here. Nick's Twitter, as well as the Canada Bear team, so that you can check out those people. But there's some sort of miscommunication, but it seems as though all parties have worked it out to a point in which they're very happy now, and Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter is not going to be in an anthology. It will be getting its own mini-series this summer, which I am psyched about. I don't know about you, Caden.
Yeah, well deserved. It was quite the kerfuffle when, because if you listen to our interview with Nick, he talks about the various production oddities that were going on with getting Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter into Manga Z just to begin with. And so we were both just kind of sick to our stomachs when we saw that it was not, in fact, Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter that was in the book that was advertised to have it.
Well, I sent it to Nick, and Nick didn't know until I sent him the picture of the book, and it was such an awkward situation because it was like the, don't shoot the messenger, and I didn't want to be the messenger. But that's how it worked out. But honestly, Nick's such a cool guy. He was so much more just saddened for the Canada Bear people who had their work miscredited. Mm-hmm. Again, shout out to the Canada Bear people. We will have everybody linked below. But it seems as though things are working out. It is, to give Antarctic Press the little bit of the benefit of the doubt. It's rough running, a small publisher with such a small team and doing all this stuff. So it seems as though they're working things out, which is a credit to them. But yeah, pick up pick up Manga Z 19 and 20 to see the rest of Canada Bear, and pick up the Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter miniseries in stores this summer.
Absolutely. And to shout them out, the Canada Bear team, we have writer Sean Wilson and on art Paul Ferris and Lafayette Azevedo, as well as Carlos Azevedo. So there's some awesome stuff we saw. Obviously, Canada Bear from where it was inside.
I got to read the first little bit of it, and it's a very fun, similarly fun to Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter, in which there's a vibe there of just some really fun, cool action and everything. It's a very fun story, so definitely worth the shout out.
Yeah.
In any case, do we want to move on to our next and final news story for the week?
Let's take a gander.
So our next little bit of news for the week is going to be the final update in the TMNT relaunch saga that we've been talking about now for 3 weeks. We finally have all of the details, all of the team, the artists, everything has been revealed. If you haven't seen our previous 2 episodes, TMNT's ending at 150 at IDW. That's, thing the first. Thing the second is that Jason Aaron was announced to be the writer on a relaunch. Thing the third coming now is both the way in which this is going to be relaunched and the artists that are going to be involved. So the first 4 issues, while they will be numbered 1 through 4 like a traditional series, they're going to be doing, the traditional Barrage thing that was done and also done in the beginnings of IDW's run, which is the 4 essentially one-shots for each of the turtles. Again, it'll be numbered 1 through 4, but it's going to be, I think, Raphael number 1. Then I want to say it was Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Donatello. I might be a little wrong on that order, but it's going to be the one-shots. And each of them will have a different artist. So the artists will be Raphael Albuquerque, Joel Jones, Cliff Chang, and Chris Burnham. Each one of the first 4 issues, and then Albuquerque will take over moving forward through the second story arc, which presumably will be a more normal, just 5, 6, 7, without the one-shots.
I mean, we know that I love Cliff Chang, my Paper Girls legend. Joelle Jones also sounds super familiar. I think she's done Wonder Woman stuff, I want to say. It looks like she's done some Wonder Woman and some Catwoman.
Okay. I was going to say, I think Joelle Jones was the only artist there that I was completely unfamiliar with. Chris Burnham, I know.
That's
very
the one that
talented.
didn't catch my ear. Do we know who that is? And do we know which turtles they're paired up?
Yeah. Chris Burnham is Batman Incorporated with Grant Morrison.
Do we know who's doing what turtle?
Oh, I think... You see, I thought they had announced that, and then it's not in the article. Sorry. Yes. So it's Raphael first is going to be by Joel Jones. Michelangelo is going to be second by Raphael Albuquerque. Leonardo will be third by Cliff Chang.
Ayo, my favorite turtle and my favorite artist.
And then Donatello will be illustrated by Chris Burnham coming forth. Had a little mouth flub there. But
what fun! And it's an interesting. I know that we know Jason Aaron's doing the main series. Do we know who's doing the art for the main series?
Yeah, Albuquerque. Like this is the main series. They're just doing them as one shots for the first 4 issues, and then issue 5 will continue with Albuquerque on
okay, with Albuquerque. Okay.
Yeah. Sweet. So it's Jason Aaron all the way through all of these, and then we have different artists for the first 4, and then Albuquerque will take over as the main artist. It says for the second story arc, so they might then shift, by story arc, or it might continue. I don't think we know that far ahead. We know, I'd say at least 8 issues, because if they consider the first story arc the first 4, I'd assume the second one's at least another 4, maybe longer. But yeah, I think this is a fun way to do the relaunch. I have a lot of faith in Jason Aaron to kind of, steer us into some good times. I think he put out a quote at some point. I can't really remember it completely off the top of my head, but he said that he wanted to kind of take it to a little bit of a darker place. The book's been a little, more upbeat recently, so we'll get a little bit of a tonal shift.
No, that makes sense to me with
fun for
Albuquerque. Yeah, because I feel like I know him from some Batman stuff, and I'm trying to remember like the aesthetics of
that's the like his name looked familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Oh, I think he's been working on the Rom V Batman run that's happening right now. Yeah, which is like very kind of gothic and super cool.
We know comic
really
books, not us like showing all
the
names.
Detective comics.
We kind of know these names, but like we got to look up what they've done because
exactly
listen, there's a lot of names on all of the books. So yeah,
No, I'm super hyped for this. I'm very
Yeah,
excited
no,
to start on my Turtles
we can
journey.
finally start talking about Turtles more on the pod, which is great because I read so much Turtles and I never get to talk about it here because Katie doesn't.
I'm gonna become a shellhead. I'm ready.
Yes, Katie.
But we didn't pull any
Make
Turtles
Katie
books
do a
this
movie
week.
marathon. We didn't, but we'll do a movie marathon through like all the movies and the shows and all documented.
Perfect.
Katie, don't worry.
Yeah, it'll be great. Just the
But-
entire visual history of the Ninja Turtles. How long could it take?
Yeah, there's only, I don't know, probably only like 1,000 hours of content.
All right, we're gonna put the
No
podcast
problem.
on hiatus so I can be properly educated.
We'll do a podcast with just us watching through all of the Ninja Turtles.
Just an explainer podcast where I come in completely fresh on Turtles content.
Yeah, you know.
In any case, coming up next is the Pull
so
List Rec. Are we ready to shuffle on over there?
Let's do it! Okay, so for today's Pull List Rec, we are going to be talking about Green Arrow number 8, Titans Beast World 5, Beast World Tour Star City, Invasive 2, followed by Ghost Machine 1 to close us off. But that is, of course, not all we picked up. Katie, what else did you get this week?
It's close to all I picked up. The only other thing that I grabbed this week, I grabbed physical copies of Dear Editor and Lotus Land number 3, which hadn't come out yet last week.
Same.
And I also picked up a number 1 called Crashdown that I'm very excited to jump into.
Ooh,
What'd you
from
get?
who? From who?
Massive, I think. It's over on
Gotcha.
my bed.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm so sorry. It's actually most of what I picked up too. I also got Daredevil Black Armor number 3 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 147, almost at the 150. We're getting there.
The 150.
I am like 30 issues behind on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but now I am actively trying to catch up before.
That's right. That's me with Nightwing. It's not 30 issues, but it is like a lot.
It's just that I had kind of stopped reading after 100. And now because
is that
like
when
big event stuff,
Tom
that's when
Waltz
Tom
left?
Waltz left, and so I kind of stopped around that point. Now I've gotten back on. I'm like climbing my way toward the present. Anyway, let's move into Green Arrow number 8, which is going to be the first poll we're talking about. Green Arrow number 8, the Emerald Archer versus Onomatopoeia. Green Arrow hits the streets of Star City in search of a lost family member and runs into Onomatopoeia. After months of time travel and space adventures, Oliver welcomes the more grounded adventure until bang, 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 bang. Our writer is Joshua Williamson, Dark Crisis, Flash, Superman. Penciler is Phil Hester from Green Hornet, Saga of the Swamp Thing, and Batman Beyond. I love Green Hornet, sorry. The inker is Eric Gapster, the colorist is Romula Fajaro Jr., and the letterer is Troy Pettery. Definitely a more grounded adventure. I think that's a good way to describe it. How'd you feel about this issue, Katie?
I mean, number 1, yes, more grounded adventure. It also is like a very contained adventure. I really like when you can have just like a kind of standalone single issue. Like we obviously had the very context dependent first arc of Green Arrow, that 1 through 6 where Ollie was coming back from Dark Crisis. And then last issue was a little kind of him adjusting to that. This, I feel like, is just a comic book you can pick up and read, which is a really nice, refreshing thing to have, especially from the big two, who I feel like are always connecting multiple stories that are going on and making it very hard to just, kind of pick up a book and read without having to follow a story.
No, this is absolutely like a grab off the shelfer that you can just read and then, not read the next issue, not have read the issue before, or whatever. I really enjoyed it in that sense. I think it's a fun story. There's some really cool action. The main fight page between Connor and Onomatopoeia is just so much fun.
It's so fun. It's set up in this really unique way that I think really just speaks to Onomatopoeia, pun intended. it's clearly done with a creative eye, which is just neat to see, to change it up.
Agreed. And I really do like the containers of it. I like the way the story's built. The resolution left me feeling a little bit flat because I think it just relies too much on unnecessarily lying to the audience
Mm-hmm.
instead of like also the villains. Don't want to go more in depth than that because spoilers, but yeah, makes the kind of ending of the book makes the rest of the book contextually feel a little bit off. But
Mm-hmm.
from a reading standpoint, it's a really enjoyable reading experience, I feel like. So I
Definitely
quite
agree.
liked it. Um, this is, I think, just a good single issue comic book.
Agreed. I don't have a whole lot to say other than that. It was
No,
just a
that's
good, fun
about
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are we ready to jump into ratings?
Yeah, you start us off, Katie.
Yeah, I gave this book a 7 out of 10. I think it was a really solid standalone issue. I think they nailed a lot of good characterization as well as a lot of fun action that just makes it feel like picking up a superhero book. I quite enjoyed it, and I would call this a Pull
Yeah.
List Rec.
I'm gonna go a little higher than you. I think probably mainly because I love Phil Hester's art so much. Like just an artist who I absolutely love. I really like kind of the build in this. I think there's a lot of good marrying of story and art. So I give this an 8 out of 10. Really good, solid single issue. I'm gonna agree with you. It's a poll list rack. And it's going to be an official Script Heroes poll list rack. But that's all I've got to say if we want to move over into Beast World number 5.
Titans Beast World number 5. Waller versus the world. After the shocking events of the last issue, the world stands divided, half with the Titans and half with the woman whose vicious methods have saved them, for now. All this and more as Dr. Hate returns to revel in and spread their own unique brand of chaos. This is coming to us from the writer, Tom Taylor, Nightwing, Injustice, and of course, Beast World. Pencilers are Ivan Reese, who's done Green Lantern, Justice League, Superman, and Eduardo Pancia, Green Lantern, Suicide Squad, and Batwing. The inkers here rather are Danny Miki and Julio Ferreira. The colorist is Brad Anderson, and the letter is Wes Abbott.
I
Jay,
love Wes Abbott.
do you
Yes,
love Beast World number 5?
I don't. And
Me either.
I don't hate it either. Let me say something weird about it.
Mhm.
Okay? Because like I don't like the ending of it regardless. But up until then, I actually think it's a fairly strong, if not very strong, fifth chapter in a book that was built better to this point. You
Mhm.
know? Like it just feels like it's trying to play off of so much unearned emotion. You
Yeah.
know, like this and I'm like, this has not been what the story's been focused on. Like this feels like a good chapter in what I wanted Beast World to be, but that's
Mhm.
not what it has been.
Mhm.
Um and I just still have a problem with how united the team is because it just makes them all feel like one character instead of like
Yes.
a team of characters. Those are my big issues. My big positive is that the Nightwing Peacemaker fight in this book is fucking awesome, and I
It's
really
pretty
enjoyed
great.
it.
Like, I will say, I liked that fight quite a bit on the page. I do kind of wish that it wasn't there, and it was because I was flipping through it because my big complaint is that specifically in this issue, Cyborg is being used for so much and is not given any sort of screen time for it. Like
Yeah,
he hacks all the drones that are
yeah,
gonna bomb a million people. He also finds Amanda Waller's hideout, these like big important to the plot things, and he gets to do literally nothing, and I'm like,
yeah.
you could show him struggle a little bit,
And
like
and
give
it's
him
doubly
something
a
to
shame
actually do.
because of
Mhm.
how good all the artists in this book illustrate Cyborg. So he
Yeah,
looks like the biggest badass in the history of like the team, and then he just like stands there, and you're like,
yeah,
I want to see this awesome design in action, doing combat,
right.
all that. Cyborg's treatment has been, I want to say, the biggest blemish on this whole run of Titans of
Hmm.
Beast World. He has gotten nothing to do. He has been just there. And he's such an interesting character when you actually do things with him.
Right. I'm gonna push back slightly on him being the biggest one to
I
transition
know,
into,
because you
oh
hate the
my
way that
god,
Raven. Yeah.
Raven. Ugh. So she
Yeah,
actually got to
but
speak this issue.
that's
which
the
was,
thing. Like, at least she gets to speak. It's not great a lot of the time, but at least she
Here's
gets to speak.
she got to speak, especially this issue. She got to a little bit last issue, but this issue
Yeah,
she has
yeah,
quite a lot going on. And it all just it sucks. Like, it's not good. So at least Cyborg gets to just kind of be in the corner, unused but unattacked. Raven just I don't like her. I don't like her in these books. I love Raven normally. I
yeah.
love when she gets to be like weird and spooky. Uh, and she's just lame. She's so lame
Yeah.
here.
I feel like almost every. I think Nightwing's the only character in this issue specifically, not in Beast World as a
Mm-hmm.
whole, but in this issue specifically, that's written well, in my opinion. Like
I'm gonna agree
every
with
other
that.
character, Cyborg for the 3 lines that he said is like well written, but he just doesn't get more to do. But like every other character, like it feels like 2 steps back for Starfire. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really like Starfire in this book.
And
She
she
just
only got
felt
like one
weird.
line.
Yeah, she felt like kind of just, I don't know, like expositional in that line or whatever. Like she was saying what the writer wanted us to think. Like
Mm-hmm.
she complains so much about like it's so awkward. Her like they're celebrating them for killing Gar, and I'm like, that's surprising to you? Like,
Right?
not that killing Gar is good and you think, but you're surprised that the world is upset that the thing that like was oppressing them and killing them is dead. Like, that's shocking to
Right?
you, Starfire. Like, really weird. Her like just flamboyant, like, character cursing there
Mm-hmm.
feels out of character.
Right?
It's really weird. I hate. I've come to the conclusion that I hate the way that Amanda Waller is written in Beast World.
That's
It's
fair.
just not nuanced at all. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
turned, I think, one of the most nuanced and interesting antagonists in the DC universe into like a mustache twirling, just straight up
Yeah,
evil villain, which is just not interesting.
not at all. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I have so many problems with Beast World, and so many of them have to do with Beast World trying to tackle way too much, and in doing so tackling nothing. Consistently in the summaries that DC has released, they talk about like the world's response to this, and like we never get that. They're like half the world sides with Amanda Waller, half sides with the Titans. We see none of that. Like, if
No.
that's the story you wanted to tell, like if those are the summaries that you have submitted,
Yeah.
tell that story. That's so much more interesting than whatever it is you're trying
Fully
to do
agree. That's
by
why I said this felt
touching a
like a fifth
thousand different
chapter
things.
of a story that wasn't there, because they kind
Mm-hmm.
of focus on that in this, where they're like, look at all these people happy for what Amanda Waller did. And it was like, yeah, but if we had that in the build, it would feel so much more
Mm-hmm.
impactful. And I also feel like the Titans are just so. It doesn't feel like they're a team of the people, like they're trying to act like, like it
Yeah.
feels like they don't make any attempt to try to understand the public. They're just
Mm-hmm.
like, no, clearly the public's like
Or
evil
to
and being,
like contact the public. Like,
yeah,
that's kind of what I figured would be like a move, is like, oh, Amanda Waller has broadcast her reasons and like has, twisted the narrative that the black hole dude like wanted to do it and that he was a hero instead of her
yeah,
kidnapping him. And like the idea of needing to turn back the public perception makes sense. Like
yeah,
it feels like it could be a cool part of the story, and then nothing.
yeah. It's
But the
it's it's
nothing
such
is
a thing.
is
Yeah,
is just a consistent problem for this,
yeah,
and I think is enhanced by the world tours. So we want to hit to our ratings on this, and we can
yep,
transfer over to our world tour for the
yep.
week.
Um, I gave this issue, and I feel like it's because I said that, like, I feel like this issue itself isn't. I don't love the character writing or like the dialogue, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the plot in this issue is actually fairly strong if it had come after stuff that came before. So I gave this. I'm gonna lower it actually slightly. I gave this a 5.5 out of 10. I had a 6 written. I'm gonna give this a 5.5 out of 10. Because I don't think as its own thing it's that bad. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
solid enough as its own thing. There's a great fight scene in it. There's actually like decent enough build in it, but the character writing isn't great, and just it doesn't fit as a puzzle piece into this event in a satisfying way. So this is not a pull list rec for me.
Fully agree. I am gonna leave it at a 6. That was my initial number as well. Uh, it helps that Nightwing is the only one who has done even kind of well, and
Yeah, yeah.
obviously bias. Uh, but yeah, not a pull list rec for me either. Do we want
All
to
right. Let's move into Tour Star
shoot over
City.
to?
Yeah, let's shoot over into Tour Star City. Beast World Tour Star City. All new Beast World stories starring the Arrow family. City of Stars, father and son archer duo Oliver and Connor Hawke are reunited in the face of evil as they investigate rumors of harrowing experiments taking place at the city aquarium. And across town, Black Canary's cry becomes lethal as she succumbs to the Beast Boy spores. Can the city's newest hero, Red Canary, stand up to her idol? Plus, Red Arrow and Stargirl reunite to protect the city from the Justice Society of America. The writers on this book, there's quite a few: Joshua Williamson, Robert Vendetti, Ryan Parrott, and Ted Brandt. The artists are Gavin Goodry, Jamal Campbell, Rose Stein, and Roger Cruz. The colorists are Andrian Lucas and Alex Gomeres, and the letterers are Troy Pettery, Wes Abbott, Steve Wanda, and Frank Kvetovic. Katie, how'd you feel about Beast World Star City?
I liked it so much. I've been
I did
I've been
too.
so back and forth on the world tours. I
Yeah.
think this is so fun. I enjoyed it
Yeah,
so
I agree.
much. I think that all three stories were really strong. I think we want to focus on probably the main story.
Yeah, we'll focus on the main story.
I
The
do
short
want to
stories
give
are
a
just
shout
things you
out
can read and
though.
enjoy.
Exactly right to the fact that the one called "Birds of a Feather" was written by Ryan Parrott. That made me laugh. He a bird too. But yeah, the main the main story. It gave me the giggles when I saw that. The main story focuses on Ollie and Connor, which is a bit of a theme for the week because we'll be looking at that later too.
Yep.
No, we already looked at that. It all gets scrambled in my brain. I thought that it was really well done. The way that it's set up is that the first part of it is like Father and is from Ollie's POV
Yeah.
because it kind of sandwiches the book, and then the second
Yeah.
part of it is like
And
Son.
different creative teams, by the way, on
Yes,
these
yeah.
two chunks. Yeah.
And that's kind of the back end of the book, and it's from Connor's POV, so you really get to see where their heads are at and why they're clashing in the way that they are. And I think that it had a lot of like really sweet moments where you can see that
Yeah.
these are two people who really want to connect with each other, but you know, from both the fact that they're being attacked by mutant animals and because of the fact that they have a complicated history, are struggling to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I fully agree. It's very interesting. I like the sandwiching with the different POVs. I think everybody who worked on, artist and writer on both
Mm-hmm.
ends are very talented. I'm gonna get my one criticism out of the way immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, man, they just keep fucking up like the world, and like continuity and
Yeah.
stuff. Like at the beginning, it's established that Oliver comes back in the middle of Beast World, which
Mm-hmm.
then makes last Green Arrow issue not make any sense. Green Arrow number 7. So, and the thing is, both of those were written by Joshua Williamson. So
You would
I
think,
don't know how he couldn't
right?
balance that. Slight little thing. It's a caption, but it does upset me in a world building continuity sense a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Outside of that, I think it's really well built in this book. I think it works really well. It does a lot to make you care about Connor again as he's kind of being reintroduced into a major role in the DC universe. Interesting villains, and just really a fun time, I think, all around.
I agree. I do want to say, with specifically the like father like son story, the again kind of with the world building of Beast World, I am a little confused. Like all of these essentially zombies have been infected with the spores, and none of them ever try to jump out into a member of the Justice League. Like there's a little one-off joke about how they're attracted to power, and Ollie's like trying not to be insulted that they're not trying to beast him. But like,
Yeah.
why would they not be trying to beast him? Like if they beasted Nightwing and they beasted Batman, like it's not that they're attracted to superpower. Like why?
It's interesting. Like I've always like they're always trying to like upgrade, but you would think the Green Arrow would be an upgrade over a normal person.
Right, and
Um,
the kind of justification that I came to, so like, why would this be the case? Like, maybe because the corpses are like literal dead bodies brought back to life. Maybe there's some sort of like magic power in there that's kept them in. But it was a very weird thing to be like, and to address that none of them were even trying to get into the arrows.
yeah. No, agreed. But Do you want to move in a rating? Do you have anything else you want to
Yeah,
hit?
no, no. I enjoyed this quite a bit. All three stories really hit it out of the park for me. I'm gonna give this a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. And Beast World aside, no, because you can't put Beast World aside in a Beast World tour. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
call it a Pull List Rec just because I think the Beast World of it all
yeah.
is
It's
unnecessary and confusing.
I give it a 7 out of 10. Also in that just vibe of it's a good time, it's fun. I'm torn on whether or not to give it a Pull List Rec. I think I'm going to, because it has some nice Green Arrow through line that, like, if you're in the Green Arrow series, you can just kind of get some nice bits. And then, like, the middle stories, I think, are just fun if
Mhm.
you're, looking for that. So I'll give it a Pull List Rec. I think you can just grab it and enjoy it. But I understand if you're trepid to do that because of Beast World. But
Yeah.
without further ado, do you want to shimmy over into Invasive number 2?
I suppose we will shimmy over. Invasive, number 2. From horror masters Cullen Bunn and Jesus Hervas, the new year is here, but 2024's more devastating experiment in terror is just getting started. Dr. Kerry Reynolds and Detective Vic Hudgens cut closer to the heart of the mystery behind the murder surgeons and the gruesome surgical attacks plaguing their city. While meeting the newest victim, they come face to face with the deranged society of killers stalking their trail and learn just how far Carrie will go to find the people who hurt her daughter. As mentioned, the writer here is Cullen Bunn, Green Lantern Lost Army, Magneto, as well as Ghost Lore. The artist is Jesus Hervas, who did the Suicide Squad, Kill Arkham Asylum, and Hellraiser. The colorist is Dan Jackson, and the letterer is Taylor Esposito. Jay,
Yeah.
we're a month and some weeks away from issue 1. How'd you feel about issue 2?
I really like issue 2. I will say it does retread a lot of the same ground, which is maybe a little bit, frustrating when you wait for issue 2 and then it's like kind of a retreading. So I can see that as like the main criticism if there was one. But I think this book has such a strong like atmosphere to it and
Mm-hmm.
like vibe to it. I really, really like the way that Cullen Bunn writes dialogue. I always have. I think that there's just a lot of character in the characters, even when you don't know anything about them before a new book. Um, and just the way that Jesus draws, these like plastic surgery victims, and then we
Mm-hmm.
get some of them like in combat in this issue, and it's just all is so unsettling. And for a comic book to like actually unsettle you for horror, I feel like is quite difficult. So I
Mm-hmm.
really give a lot of credit to them for succeeding in that in Invasive. So I really did enjoy this issue.
I I did not feel the same excitement I had after issue 1, because Invasive is very much out of my wheelhouse. It's one, I don't normally read horror, and two, it's not the type of horror that I read when I do. Uh, and I don't know if it's like a Hunger in the Dusk thing where we waited too long for this next issue that I've
The
really
gap
kind of
hurt.
exactly that I've really lost the momentum from issue 1. But I couldn't find myself getting reinvested in this. And I think, like you said, we're covering a lot of the same things we did in
Yeah,
issue 1. So even though the characters do make some discoveries and they learn some things, I feel like I didn't learn anything new from this
that's
issue,
super true and super fair.
which made it feel a little not exciting to me. Like the
Yeah,
characters are okay for me. They really don't jump off the page the way that I would want them to. Uh, and the art is gorgeous and the writing is very competent. I don't know that the story really has the legs for me.
that's super fair. I get, especially like the fact that it's essentially an investigation book.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there's not much like discovery in this issue. There is one big discovery in this issue, which I think was enough to kind of grab me. And there's that cool action scene there. I don't love the ending of this issue. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably my biggest, not to get into spoiler territory, but that's probably my biggest criticism of it. But it's just this book has an atmosphere for me. It has a vibe for me that really pulls me in and makes me invested. But yeah, I don't know. Do you want to get into ratings and
Yeah, let's jump into it. I'll kick mine out first. Just because it's really not my type of book. I gave it a 5 out of 10. It's not my type
lower
of
than
book, but I
this
do
one?
think eh, it's a combination of it not being a book for me and it really not having that forward momentum that issue one had.
Gotcha. This might be one of the like largest discrepancies we've ever
Ooh,
had in a rating. I gave this an 8.5 out of 10. Um and
wow.
I don't think I'll call it a pull list rec though, because I do think you need issue one, despite the fact that it retreads a lot of ground. I don't think that this is a nice
Mhm.
entry point, but yeah, I think it's very enjoyable. So get the series. I think you should give the series a shot. Katie doesn't, evidently, but
Hey, if it's for you, it's for you. But let's jump over to Ghost Machine, where there might be a little bit of
let's
something
do
for
it.
everyone.
Ghost Machine, number one, introducing an all new shared universe full of strange, fun, exciting, and action packed characters Geiger, Redcoat, Rook, the Rockefellers, and many, many more. What ties Geiger, Redcoat, Widow X, and the others mysterious historical heroes of the unnamed together? Why is Rook the key to saving the war torn world of Exodus? How will everyone's soon to be favorite family of the future adapt to a new life in the present? The writers on this book are Jeff Johns, Peter J. Tomasi, Maddle Jut, Brian Hitch, and Brad Meltzer. The artists are Ivan Reese, Francis Menopal, Gary Frank, Jason Fabach, Peter Snedgeberg, and Lamont Maggie. The colors are Brad Anderson and Bjorn Hansen, and the letterer is Rob Lay. Jeez, lettering, whole 64-page book. What a saint.
That's impressive.
Uh, right? Um, yeah, there were a lot of books in this, mostly like
Yes.
previews for the
Mhm.
issues that are coming for this new imprint of Image. Uh, Katie, why don't we? I think we'll each kind of pick out a story that was our favorite that we want to
Yeah.
talk about. Um, and then maybe we'll just give some final thoughts on like how we feel about the not shared universe, but shared universes going forward.
Yeah. Well, I think we have the same favorite story. So
Yeah.
I will pick my second favorite. I'm gonna
Okay.
go with the unnamed, our first story here. This is
Hmm.
Geiger, Redcoat, and some
It's
little
intriguing for
Easter eggs
sure.
of other characters. One, it has a two-headed dog, a second head to pet. Amazing, can't go wrong. I think that the designs and the characters of the wasteland part of it, so the part focused on Geiger, really
Yes.
grabbed me. Like the nuclear knight who's like in this hazmat suit that's modeled after like a suit of armor. Super cool. The way
Yeah.
that Geiger looks when he's like flooded with radiation, super cool, super intimidating. And I think that having this, grandpa figure telling stories to kids and using that as the framing device for showing us who Geiger is was like really effective in making me
Agreed.
I'm very interested in this Geiger fella. However, the red coat part was a little flatter for me. Uh,
I agree.
we see that there are four characters who are essentially introduced in this. We have Redcoat, the Civil War dude, the robot dude, and Geiger. And Geiger is really the only one that I came away feeling like super interested in personally.
I fully agree with you, and I feel like it points to one of the biggest issues with like indie and specifically creator owned books trying to create shared universes. We
Mm-hmm.
saw something similar when like Image at its very beginning like kind of tried to create a shared universe, and it just kind of felt weird. We talked about it in our Savage
Our
Dragon
Savage
review where these
Dragon review.
characters popped in, and it was just like this book feels like it'd be better if it wasn't a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same way here, especially because I feel like Geiger doesn't fit the vibe of everything else going on,
Yeah.
and it feels very shoehorned in for him to share ground with these other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if it was kind of just thinking of like, oh well, he's in the future, so they'll never actually interact, I'd feel a lot better. But it's specifically mentioned that Redcoat is like still kicking it around, so he's going to deal with
Yeah.
Redcoat, and I'm like, I don't know if
I think
that's
he's gonna have
something I
to deal
want
with
to
all of
see.
them.
I think Redcoat's the only one specifically mentioned, so I'm not sure because like there's a timeline put after, and they're all very far apart in time. Um, It's just like
Yeah, but I think they're
Redcoat lives
all
forever.
immortal is the thing.
Are they all immortal?
I believe they're
Gotcha.
all immortal
They
and they're
mentioned the
all going to be
Northerner. I
working
know they
together.
mentioned the
Yeah.
Northerner was.
And then the other lad is a robot, Junkyard Joe.
That's true. He's a robot. So yeah, I don't love that. I don't think all those pieces are really feeling like they're gonna fit together super well.
Mm-hmm.
I've also never been the biggest fan. I did like skim them of the whole like here are character bios and like all
Right.
this extra information that you don't get in like a nice way. You're just
Mm-hmm.
getting it shoved on you. Don't love that.
Especially as a precursor. Like, if you remember
Yeah,
the old, like, Who's Who in the DC Universe things,
yeah,
that's fun. This is not fun.
yeah. Agreed. But if we want to pivot
Yes.
to another story, Rook Exodus, I think, was both of our favorite stories.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting idea,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to make sure I don't miscredit here. Yeah, this is the story that Jason Fabok is illustrating, and Jason Fabok is one of the most talented
Top tier.
illustrators in all of art in all of comics, and the character designs in this book in this story are just god tier. Like Swine, who is possibly a new favorite indie character for me. Look at that character design.
Yeah, they have these
So
like
ridiculously
high
good.
tech animal masks that allow them to control
Yeah.
the animals. It's
Yeah.
so cool, and I think this does a really, really, really good job of being a teaser. Like, this is
Yeah.
definitely a series I'm gonna pick up because of
I've
this
already
teaser.
put it a note to add to my poll list. I was like,
Yes.
I am pumped for this, and this is the only one of the more preview feeling books that to me it felt like it immediately nailed getting across the characters' personalities.
Yes.
I
Mm-hmm.
immediately knew both Rook and Swine's personalities and their dynamic, and I
Yes.
was invested and interested.
Absolutely. That one is just far and away the best one, and I
Yeah.
think the only one of these, except for maybe the Rocket Fellers, I'm a little intrigued by them. That I'm going to be adding to my pull list.
I'm intrigued by I keep forgetting the name of it, but the one about like the boy and girl who are like demon and
Oh, it's
angel.
something in
Um,
Halo. Uh, uh, uh,
um,
Hornsby and Halo.
Hornsby and Halo. That might
Yeah.
be one that I check out. I like that kind of stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that seemed fun to me too. That was a fun little self-contained story.
Yeah.
But
Overall,
yeah,
how did you
this is a
feel about
lot.
Ghost Machine?
It's a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of competence. There's a lot of great talent being put into this. The idea of trying to launch all of these books and 3 shared universes, not
Yeah.
a shared universe, but 3 different shared universes is a lot to ask for fans. I think the vibe is going to be like, oh, some people jump on this shared universe, some people jump on this shared universe. But my vibe is more like, I like this little piece of this universe, and I like this little piece of this
Yes.
universe, and I like this little piece of this universe. So I kind of wish some of these were just standalone
Mm-hmm.
books. I don't know. My pull list definitely cannot survive adding like all of these books, so it's
Yeah.
going to be very picky and choosy for me. I assume Rook Exodus will be the one that we'll be talking about on the podcast moving forward.
I would think so.
But yeah, it's a lot. But I think that I like ambition out of comic creators, and
Mm-hmm.
I really do applaud them for trying something new. And this is a great deal for $5, by the way. This
Right?
is a hard pull list rec. Like Jesus Christ,
Like,
you
pick
get
it
your
up.
money's worth.
And it
Yeah.
gives you like so many different stories so you can see what you want to get going forward.
Yeah, so smart move. I think that this book on its own did a good job in like doing what it was set out to do, but it's also not like nobody's going to read this whole book and be like, this book was a masterpiece, not like this
Yeah,
story
yeah.
that like. So I give it a 7.5 out of 10, like just at that level of this is good. This does what it's supposed to do, you know?
Yeah, it felt weird giving it a rating
Yeah.
because of what it is.
Super fair.
I landed on a 6.5 out of 10 just as I like averaged out how I felt about the various stories.
That's fair.
But yeah, I would grab it too. Call this a pull list rec.
And they already have merch. Apparently. Because who doesn't
Which
want
is
merch of the books
I don't
that
know
aren't
that that's
out
a
yet?
green flag. I'll call it a beige
No.
flag. We'll see how good
But-
the books are.
Rook Exodus. Join us for Rook Exodus #1 in April, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it. But for
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
let's exodus over. All right, this week for the back issue review, we read Rain, the graphic novel adaptation of Joe Hill's Strange Weather short story of the same name. On a seemingly normal August day in Boulder, Colorado, the skies are clear and Honeysuckle Speck couldn't be happier. She's finally moving in with her girlfriend, Yolanda. But the world is literally torn apart when dark clouds roll in and release a downpour of nails, splinters of bright crystal that shred the skin of anyone not safely undercover. Throughout the course of this story, our beloved Honeysuckle is off in search of her now shredded to bit girlfriend's father so that she can let him know that their beloved Yolanda has died. We see her cross from Boulder up to Denver across treacherous highways, encountering all sorts of apocalyptic threats and situations. I really love the artist on this, Zoe Thorogood. She did The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. She's doing a hack slash book right now that I've been picking up and enjoying. And our writer here is David M. Booher, who actually jumped onto the scene with Rain, and then has also worked on a Firefly series, as well as the current Saturday Morning Adventures D&D series. Jason, how did you
Yes.
feel about Rain?
There's two things I want to get right off the bat to say with this. The first one, before I really talk about anything overly serious about the book, I want to say this because I feel like it vindicates a point that I've made multiple times on this podcast. Yolanda's fridged, and it's fine because it makes sense with the plot. But Yolanda is fridged, and I just want to make that point.
Fridging is specifically for male characters.
That's bullshit. She's fridged, and I feel vindicated a little bit. Every time I see it done in like a book that wasn't shit on for doing it, I feel a little vindicated, just a little bit. But the other thing that I want to say, now that I got that out of the way, is that I like the story and the concept. I can tell it's a novella adaptation because I don't think it was made for comic books.
That is super fair.
If that makes sense. It feels like a lot. There's really great moments that I think really work with Zoe Thorogood's art, but I feel like she's not given a lot to do. There's a lot of her just drawing faces as people talk, and pages are just covered in captions and dialogue because it is an adaptation. It's not, and this will kind of give you an idea as to the way I'm on this book. It's not as bad as the Percy Jackson adaptation by any stretch of the imagination, but it has a similar problem where it's just not the right format. It feels like for the story, because so much of this is internality, so much of it is like contemplation, so much of it is talking. We get these cool kind of action moments, not necessarily like action like fighting sometimes, like sometimes it's other things, but we get these moments where there's bits and I'm like, oh, this works really well for comic book. Zoe Thorogood gets to do some really cool art stuff. Yolanda's death being one of them, where the art is just phenomenal. There's times where she does things in the dialogue sequences that are really cool, like the silhouettes and stuff. So there's times where she gets to kind of do stuff, but there's a lot of just faces talking, which I don't think make use of Zoe Thorogood's strengths, and I think just make the book not really feel like it was meant to be a comic book. And that's my overarching opinion on the story.
That's super fair. I hear that 100%. Coming into this week, I had not read the graphic novel yet. I'd read the short story a couple years ago when I was trying.
Which I've not read. I came into this blind.
No, that's very, very, very fair.
No, I just want to tell you, like, this isn't me being like, I like the novella and I feel like it should only be a novella. This is me, like, reading this and being like, I can tell that this was a novella first because there's so much just text on the page.
Yeah, and kind of what you hit on with, as a bit of a complaint, I actually think is really strong, specifically in Thorogood's art style. I think that she's so amazing at, like, small expressions and using those to convey big emotions, and like writing. She didn't write this one. She's written a number of her other books. In fact, I think all the three of the ones that I mentioned, she also wrote. But she's so good at capturing like a very human expression. Like nothing is ever over the top. The gore sometimes teeters. We get a lot of eyeballs being punctured and
which I enjoyed most of. The only moment where I thought the action felt off to me and I didn't really like Zoe's art was the moment in which the criminal like jumps on the police officer's back and like fair. claws, I was like, it looks weird, like his size and everything. That it just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
quite work for me. But most of it, I didn't really have complaints about the art for the most part. I do really enjoy the art. I just felt like, and I think it's because you said so many of the expressions like aren't exaggerated. So in moments where there's a lot going on action wise, and it's like again, I'll point to Yolanda's death.
Mm-hmm.
Like when she's reacting to that, the nice like little just slight reaction breaks your heart and it feels great. But when it's just page after page of just faces, when it's
Mm-hmm.
only slight reactions and like slight expressions, it just gets boring visually to see just faces after face. And this is not an indictment of
Right.
Thorogood's art, which I think is very good. It's an indictment of the fact of just we're just getting pages and pages of close up dialogue
Mm-hmm.
and captions and stuff, and that's just not fun for me, you
And
know?
see, I think it's very fun. I love like kind of close internal character stuff. It's my jam
Yeah, I get that.
100%. And so
Yeah, I
this
just,
does really
yeah,
work
yeah.
for me in that aspect where we're traveling with Honeysuckle as she's just lost the only person she's ever loved, and we spend most of our time looking at her instead of the world, which you
Yeah.
joked last week that you love apocalypse books, which like isn't necessarily a joke, but when it comes to this, I laughed because I'm like, I know you do. This is not really.
No,
It's
that's
not
why I'm
like
like,
a
I love the
wasteland
concept.
apocalypse.
This could be a
Yeah.
really good apocalypse book, even with the basic plot of like, going to tell, the father the news and like
Mm-hmm.
encounter things. But it's just like all those moments of like encountering trouble get like a couple pages, and then we get pages of them talking about it. And again, it's not that it's bad. Like, it's not like I sat here and I read it and I was like, this is bad, or this dialogue isn't good, or these captions aren't good. But I sat there and I'm like, why am I also seeing pictures here? Like, I might as well just be reading a book that has like illustrations in it when we get to
Mm-hmm.
the act, like an illustrated edition of a book. Like
Mm-hmm.
that felt like it was just what this was trying to be instead of being a comic book. Like I
That's
feel like they
super
didn't use
fair.
the medium to its potential. Like I don't think the plus of a comic book medium is just getting to like look at characters as they talk. Like I feel like a lot, and there's moments in which they did, like where we get
Mm-hmm.
those like cool silhouette. I think it's like right after God, what's his name? It's when Honeysuckle is talking to the
Mark
little boy whose
Despot.
name is escaping me. What?
Mark
No, it's the
Despot.
the boy. The
Oh,
boy, no, the little boy who catches up, not Mark.
oh no, how am I blanking on his name? Tristan, Christian. No, no,
I
no,
remembered
no.
all throughout the book. Like I actually thought this book, because of all the talking, did
Right?
not have one of my big criticisms of indie books usually, which is that I didn't know people's names. I did in this book, so I was very happy about that. But now I'm blanking on this character's name, and I feel really bad.
Templeton.
But Templeton,
Because he's a
like
weird
when
little kid
Templeton
with a
kind of
weird
catches
little
up.
name.
Yeah,
Templeton,
and they
that's
have
the
these
name of
conversations,
the
and there's
rat.
like the silhouettes, and then the captions like in the bottom silhouette. Like that's great, but then we just get pages after and before that are just normal. I'm like, if we're gonna just get talking and situations, like I want the art to take more risks like that, where it's more stylistic, because
Mm-hmm.
then it's visually interesting and interesting from a content standpoint. Because I never think, well, actually, there's things I don't like in this book with the way that they do certain things, captions. I think certain things are a little heavy handed in it. But for the most part, I'm not upset about the content. A lot of point, I just wish that the bits kind of married
Mm-hmm.
together better. Um, but
See,
like there's
I
also
didn't
like when
have
the
that
when the Colt
problem.
catches up to them. I think that's bits great too.
Mm-hmm.
Where like we get like that like they when the frisbee like hits her in the head, or not, you know what I mean, like that,
Yeah,
whatever it is,
the
it worked as a frisbee. That's
yeah.
a fantastic panel. Like there's some really great artwork in here, but there's just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of kind of monotonous visual with just
And see, I'm
captions that are
gonna
internal.
push back on you on a lot of what you said. I think that for a book that is very dialogue and caption heavy, the conversations and the pages are still very interesting to me because Zoe Thorogood does a lot of like she has this like very gentle line work, like this very thin line work that lets her put a lot of details on the page. So like when I'm looking at many, if not most of her panels, the panels themselves add to my reading experience just by virtue of how much is on there. Like you have a lot to look at with her art. And I think that it is really effective, and I don't think that the conversations ever feel like particularly back and forthy. I feel like we pretty much always have forward momentum going. Yeah, I think that she does a great job with conversation scenes and making them feel interesting.
I'm a little confused by you saying her style's detail heavy. That feels incorrect. Like it feels like her style's kind of more simplistic. In like a lot of the panels are like, okay, you have face and then coloring and then literally no background. That's just like a colored background. Um, like it feels. I don't know if I'd call
Right,
it a
but I don't
detail
know that
heavy
those are
style.
often back to back. Like every so often, to keep the page looking interesting, some of them will have more blank backgrounds, but that's contrasted with her very detail heavy panels.
I don't know if that. I'm looking in issue 3 right now, and there's like 4 pages or 5 pages back to back that are all like that. It's when they're like talking around the fire. It goes on for a while. I don't. I think there's quite a few panels and quite a few pages that are pretty simplistic, which I don't think is a downside in general. It's just again when it's a lot of simplistic stuff and then a lot of captions and a lot of internality, like that isn't a combo that I love because it's just
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that is why I enjoy comic. At that point, I'd rather read a novel or something and just get all the internality and just be reading it. If we're in comics, I want something that feels like it needs. And again, this is a lot of personal preference. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
This is another. This is similar to Paper Girls in the sense of it's me sitting here, and being like, I just it doesn't grab me because it's not the kind of thing that I love. But also, my comparison is in Paper Girls. Like it's weird because I feel like I enjoyed this as a unit more than Paper Girls, but at least in Paper Girls, I'm like, well, we're kind of ramping up to something and it's going to keep
Mm-hmm.
going. This is like its whole thing, and so I'm
Right.
just here and I'm like, I don't know if the format landed for me. But that's a personal thing. I do want to say I did really like the coloring in this. It is
Mm-hmm.
similar to Paper Girls, but I feel like this is a little bit heavier on like the contrast, maybe is the way to put it. I
Mm-hmm.
just think it looks really cool at a lot of points in the coloring. I don't know if I can quite put my finger on why I enjoyed this coloring so much more than in Paper Girls
I mean, it's
because it is
much
like that
subtler
similar
than
style
Paper
of color.
Girls. Paper Girls is
Yeah, yeah,
decidedly like bold colors, and these are much more muted, which I think really fits with the
yeah.
aesthetic
So I
of
really
Thorogood's
like the
art.
coloring. I would really say and say like the thing that I came away liking the most in this probably was the coloring work. I think the coloring work is very strong.
Yeah, some of the
Um,
coloring is Zoe Thorogood, but I want to toss out some of the coloring. I don't think on every book in it is Chris O'Halloran,
okay.
but Zoe
Yeah, I
Thorogood
really
does.
do like the coloring.
I think the lion's
So
share.
credit there. And I think the art's good too. I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just that thing of like when things just certain thing pieces fit
For
together,
sure,
it doesn't create a puzzle that I overall love.
absolutely.
And I didn't dislike this either. I just felt that it was again wrong. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like the wrong format just keeps coming. Like it feels like an adaptation to me. It does not feel like it was made to be a comic book. Which
What's
it is an adaptation.
odd
So
to
maybe that's
me
like
is like I read the novella and it worked for me there. I liked the story a lot. That's why when I saw that a name that I liked was attached to the book, I was like, yes, gonna get this absolutely. Uh, I really, I think it succeeded a lot as an adaptation. I think that the visuals really added to this world. And Joe Hill is nothing if not verbose. Like he is very, very wordy, perhaps too much so sometimes. Um, which I like as a very visual reader, and I think that Zoe Thorogood really
I'm sorry. I'm
captured
sorry.
the aesthetics well.
Can you back up there? You just said you like verbose because you're a visual reader.
Exactly, like I like when people paint a picture for me. Talking about Joe Hill
Okay.
in the
Okay.
in the
Okay.
novella
Okay.
to the
Okay.
transfer
Okay. Okay.
adaptation
Okay.
wise, which
Gotcha. Gotcha.
also fun
Gotcha.
fact
Gotcha.
that's Stephen King's son. Just a fun
Oh, he
fact.
uses a pen name, right? So that it's
He
not. Yeah, yeah. I've
does.
heard about that. I have not
Uh,
read anything that he has written, but I
That's
have
fair.
heard of him being
Again,
a
he's
fan.
very wordy. Don't read his novels. His short stuff is much better. Um, Yeah, I think that Zoe Thorogood did a really good job, and I feel bad not bringing up David Booher more, uh, but that's because it's just like good to me. Like I have not
That's the
a
writer.
lot of yeah. I don't really have complaints on the like dialogue itself, and I think that the plot moved really well. I do feel like I missed out not reading it sequentially, like I guess not sequentially, but like monthly when it was releasing, because I feel like there are a lot of really good kind of elements that go on that have me wanting to read more, and I think that those would feel very like
The issue enders are good
bittersweet.
for sure.
Yeah. And reading it as a collection, I just get that relief right away. And I feel like with a book like this, where we're traveling distances, it is nice to have that like physical time passing where you're like, oh, gee, yes, we have been on this journey for a while, instead of being on this journey for, 45 minutes or
Yeah,
whatever it takes for you to read a collected edition of it.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like this quite a bit as an adaptation as well as a comic on its own, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna push back heavily. I think the writing is what I really dislike about. Like I was kind of saying it through the art, but the writing I think is the problem with this book,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that it felt like he didn't make any of this. And again, I haven't read the novella, so maybe he
That's
did,
all right.
and that's kind of even sadder. But it felt like he didn't make the decisions of, okay, what are the important moments? Let's cut other things and just try to do it in the comic book format. It felt like he was very much like, I got to put this all on the page, so we're just gonna do a bunch of captions so all the internality can be there, and all the like lines from the book can be there. Like it didn't feel like he made enough decisions to transfer the format, and that's why I said, like, whenever I was complaining about the art, I was saying I felt like Cliff Chang wasn't given enough to do. Like
That's
my
so
my,
fair.
my problem is with the sorry, so they're good. I said Cliff Chang because I've been thinking
We
about,
were talking about Paper
anyway,
Girls, yeah.
we were talking about Paper Girls, yeah. But sorry, Zoe Thorogood wasn't given up. I felt like he didn't. Again, not read the novella. This is my assumption of why it's, why I don't
No, no, yeah.
like it. But it feels like because it's an adaptation, he was there and he was like, okay, I need these captions because so much of the book is internality or thoughts, so we need all of that on the page, and all these conversations happen in the book, so we need to have those here, instead of being like, okay, what are the important moments? Here's the journey. Let me plot out what happens on the journey, and then let's write the comic book to go through those as a comic book, instead of like basically take the plot and adapt that versus straight adapting the novella. Again, have not read the novella, so you
Which is
can
fair.
tell
It's
me
been
how
years
much
since
they
I've
cut and
read
stuff.
it. And I feel like that just isn't that's just not the impression that I got. Like I didn't reread it or anything for this. Um like I felt like important moments were made important because of where they were in this story, not necessarily because of where they would have fit into the original story. Like I don't remember what changes would have happened because the broad strokes are the same. So I found the like bigger moments all worked pretty well for me. Like I think that maybe my like gripe would be that we didn't get enough of Mark, the MMA fighter who ends up being an ally to uh, Honeysuckle. But I think that in general, this stood on its own really well. Like if I didn't read it as an adaptation, I don't think I would have thought adaptation immediately. Because some, like in a general sense, if I heard there was a story about like shards of crystal falling from the sky, that's something that I would say, yes, that should be a comic book. That's got
I
such
agree, and that's why I
great
said on a concept
visual.
sense I agree. But then reading it, that's not really where the focus is. The focus is more on like the internality and the
Hmm.
the character, the main character. And that's the other thing, it's so centric on the main character
Yeah.
that I feel like a lot of the other characters don't get much to do or
Hmm.
be. And that's why,
That
again,
is
like
that
it's
is fair.
such
That is.
internal and it's so much on her that I'm like, it just feels like it isn't meant to be a comic book, you
I'm
know
gonna disagree with you on that. Like we have very different tastes in comic books when we get down to the minutia of it, and I love a really, really close character study. And I think that while the supporting cast definitely could have been
yeah.
more fleshed out, I wish they would have had more time to focus on them and give us more of their stuff. I feel like for what we were doing, which was following Honeysuckle's story, it was really effective to me as a comic book. but I'm also someone who enjoys a lot of captions and turning out. Like, there's a reason Scott Snyder is my favorite comic book writer.
Yeah.
It's because he won't shut the fuck up, and I love that for him.
Yeah.
And so heavy captions, heavy dialogue is my jam, and pairing it with art that works so well for the aesthetic is just icing on the cake for me.
The last thing I want to touch on, because it hurt the book,
I want
in my
you
opinion,
to respond to me as soon as you hear the next word
of
I'm going to say.
Ursula being the one to
Wait, the word was
cause
now?
it.
Yeah.
It felt
Templeton's
so
mom,
okay.
as revenge for her husband's life work being stolen, she has been seeding all of these chemicals into the clouds to make the rain turn into these crystal shards.
I
will agree
a little
that it
off to me, and just like, yes, we needed to tie it, especially because because this is a close character study. It didn't feel like it was about the event or about the world. It felt so weird to then pull in the whole event and world and be like, yes, the whole thing has been around this group of characters that we've been following, instead of it being like, no, we're following this character who was affected by the world event, but it's not about the world event, it's about her. But I'm interested.
No, I definitely hear that. I think that's a super valid criticism. I think that it would have worked better if it wasn't so bombastic. Like, I think if they, because they planted like one seed in terms of Templeton.
The thing was like, she picked out things that were planted, but there was no way for you to get there.
That's why I kind of rolled my eyes a bit when I said planted the seeds. I think that those definitely should have been sown more. And I don't think that having Ursula snap and, crush Mark's skull and then go wild was the way to do this reveal. I think that if Templeton had gone outside and it started raining, because the idea of because Templeton runs away because he's afraid of what his mom has done, and then she goes out during the storm and is just murdered by the nails from the sky, which is kind of poetic, both on she's being killed by her own creation and from a
cool moment. It just felt very
that's what I'm saying. That could have stayed, and then we could get, for something that was so willing to caption stuff out, I feel like we could have gotten then Honeysuckle going up into her room where she had been locked away and finding this evidence and being like, well, now we have to go deliver it. And then we could have stuck more on the Honeysuckle POV instead of blasting out to Ursula.
It feels, because I feel like any trying to tie it into the greater event just doesn't fit the way that this story was told, because it was so told around one character and not about the event and the whole big thing. We had bits of news and stuff being shown, but those were the bits where I said it felt heavy-handed. I didn't really like them, because I was just that just felt like wink wink nudge nudge, haha, you agree with me, right, audience? It didn't feel like it had bearing on the plot. And then the end was oh no, it kind of did have bearing on the plot, and I was just those moments didn't really feel plot important as they were coming. So that was a little bit off to me.
And I do think that it actually undermines right I do think it kind of undermines something that Honeysuckle says. It's either issue 1 or 2, reading it collected, and it didn't have the divides, made it a little tough to figure out where those issue breaks were. But she's venturing out towards Denver, and she arrives in the city and sees all of these cars, all of these dead people, and she's oh, I can't believe that I was thinking that, kind of thinking about her own tragedy so much. She's this is why would I think that I'm the only one going through this? This is obviously much bigger than me. And so I think making it so directly related to her in terms of it's literally her neighbor who started it, does kind of cut through that a bit. But I don't think they leaned in hard enough to any sort of theming with that to make it super impactful.
I will say, because I do want to, because we've been a little focused on the beginning and then the end. I want to say I think issue 4 was fairly strong, to the point that I was literally when we went to I'm how are they doing in issue 5? It doesn't really feel like that's going to work, and then it didn't really, in my opinion. I was oh, they had to create this reveal to create more tension. So I feel like that was the better storytelling of like within the greater event, having somebody kind of more directly related to her be a villain and that she had to deal with. Like that worked really well. That felt like that personal level of vindication and connection, and that I really, really like. So I want to give that a quick shout out because I hadn't talked up the fact that I really liked that kind of semi-conclusion.
Is that when
but
she
then we
goes
kind of
to
came
see,
around? That's when she actually finds the
arrives
father,
at-
and then the neighbor has like tied him up outside, and he died, and then she ties him up. Like it's a much more
it's a good apocalypse
fitting
moment, for sure.
ending. Yeah, it's a much more fitting, I think, for the story that they were telling, rather than tying it into the greater event. Because that was personal, but within the circumstances of the event, which I feel like was the story that we were telling, instead of like, you know, saving the world event, you know.
No, I think that's a very fair. That was definitely like the strongest part of the book for me as well, when she gets to have conflict that is tied to her. Because so much of it is,
and then we
like,
get a great
of
mix of internality, action, interacting with other characters. Like that felt like a balance that worked in comic books to me better than the rest of the book. But
that's super fair. Yeah, definitely shout out to that issue for being just the best issue in the book.
Hey, we're in agreement on that. At least we agree on the best issue.
But speaking of disagreeing, do we want to jump into ratings?
Ratings, and let's do our ratings first, and then we'll read through our lists. I am going to give this a 6.5 out of 10. I think there's a lot of good moments. I like the art, but just like I said, I don't think that the way that it interacted with comic book medium was what I'm looking for. What was your rating, Katie?
You know, I said we were gonna continue to disagree. I actually also gave it a 6.5 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think that it's good.
We're just
like
focusing on different bits. Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Now I feel better about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. But it's not like, you know, earth shattering. Zoe Thorogood's art is fantastic, but it's not, you know.
Maybe we'll go into like her hack slash book or something in the future, so I can see like.
Oh my gosh, we could do It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth, which is all conversations.
No, stop it! Stop with the conversation books, Katie. This is comic books. It's a visual medium. God, not me shouting.
But I will jump into my top 10 list. Look, you made me read Savage Dragon. So my top 10
fits the rule of it being a visual, you know, medium. That is all visual. The story there is barely there. It's a visual medium.
All right, top of my top 10 list: Nocterra, Full Throttle Dark, then Batman and Robin Volume 1, then Chicken Devil, Under Pressure, then tied for number 4, Radiant Black, Not So Secret Origin, and Paper Girls Volume 1. I'm going to slot in here at number 6, Rain, then Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1, Savage Dragon, Baptism of Fire, and then coming in at a beautiful number 10, Percy Jackson's The Lightning Thief.
Okay, I'm going to agree with you on the top 2 there. Number 1 is Nocterra Volume 1. Number 2 is Batman and Robin. Number 3 is Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Number 4, Radiant Black. Number 5, Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1. Number 6, Savage Dragon, Baptism of Fire. Number 7, Chicken Devil, Volume 1. Number 8 is where I'm sliding in, Rain. I think it's the better of the two adaptations that both suffer from being adaptations. Right below it is going to be the worst adaptation, Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief. And then at number 10 is going to be Paper Girls. But I want to read the next volume of Paper Girls so I can hopefully have Paper Girls higher.
Ooh, maybe we'll do bonus episode Paper Girls.
Then it won't be on the list, kid. Then I can't feel better.
I'll pick Paper Girls Volume 2 soon. It'll be great. But are we ready to mosey on over to
Volume 2 as well at some point?
Oh, but Nocterra Volume 1 is perfect. I don't want to sully it with Volume 2.
Katie doesn't want to talk about more Nocterra. We're going to talk about more Nocterra. I'm much higher,
I love Nocterra Volume 1
is.
so much. Volumes 2 and 3 just aren't as good as Volume 1. They're still amazing.
I don't think they're quite, but I enjoy all of Nocterra. Nocterra is a lot of fun. You know, let's enjoy Nocterra. Anyway,
let's go enjoy the Creator Corner. Well, here we are in the Creator Corner, where we sit back, relax, talk about writing books, talk about the publishing industry, talk about the comics industry. We're gonna focus on that writing book side of thing today.
Okay.
Tying into our adventures with Ghost Machine, I want to talk about hooking your readers.
Ooh.
Like, how do you have someone read the first pages or a teaser or something of your book and make them buy in, make them want to read the rest of it?
This is something I think I failed on numerous occasions. It's such a tough thing. Like, your brain is always kind of, I think, wired for like, I need to hook them in the first issue. Is like your brain, like just the first issue. So it's like, okay, we'll put this nice like cliffhanger or something at the end, and we'll have gotten them. They get all this information, but you don't really think about somebody giving up on your book before the end. Which when you're like brand new and you sit there and like the first 6 pages are exposition dumping or something, it's like, oh, that doesn't really work. So I think an immediately interesting character is one of the best things you can do, because that'll buy you enough pages to get to the meat of the story. That's where my head's immediately going to. But the other nice thing that you can do, which I am experimenting with right now for the first time, is starting something with an anthology story. Like starting with something that's intended to be a 4, a 6, an 8, a 10-page story, so that it's like a whole thing. It's like, here's this character that maybe then you're hoping to do more with, but you can get people invested in it in a story that it's not like you have to hook them in X amount of time because they're just going to read this short story. And if that story is good enough on a whole, maybe you can hook them. I don't know, Kate. Have you had much experience with like really debating the way to hook people immediately in the book?
I think that's something that you have to consider when you're figuring out where to start your book. Like you said, something that just lore dumps immediately isn't necessarily going to be something that invites readers to keep going. Something that I think succeeds with doing that would be something like Noctera, where the first 2 or 3 pages are talking about like the sun disappearing, but that's like an interesting enough concept, and you're given enough with the characters themselves there to kind of justify that. So I
want to add on, like, the other thing there is that that's a very established creator and creative team, and they get more time and more opportunity. There's a difference between books that succeed from known talent and books that succeed from unknown talent. You know, read a lot of creators like break-in book versus the stuff they do now, and it's a very different dichotomy.
Right, and I think the kind of biggest tip for figuring out where to start your book is figuring out just how close to the end you can start it. That's like, a general writing rule is start as close to the end as possible.
Start your story as late as possible. Yeah.
And that's also going to be what's going to help hook people reading it, because that means that the first thing they see is going to be as close to the conflict as you can get. It's going to have that element of seeing what's coming and wanting to see that play out. So I think figuring out where to start your book is all about figuring out where it's going to be the most engaging to start your book.
I think that's a good way to put. Something else that I like that kind of popped into my head when you say it is, I feel like an interesting way to do it, and a way that I think is often very successful, is like the abnormal normal, which is like you start in a normal situation, but there's something immediately slightly off that is going to kind of hook the reader into being like, well, I have to at least get to the point where I figure out why this is happening. If it's like, everybody around the main character seems to have forgotten something, and the main character's like, why does nobody know this thing that happened, or if something has changed but it's not really immediately clear what that is. I think that's a really cool hook that you see in a decent amount of like normalcy breaking books.
For sure. And it's not even that it has to be something that the character knows about. I mean, if you think about just a character walking down the street, not interesting. If we see the character walk past us down the street, and then like a shadowy figure in a trench coat and fedora steps out from an alley and follows them, that kind of disruption of the expected is the type of thing that makes you want to keep reading.
Yeah. I feel like I have to bring up the more old school Kirby, Eastman, and Laird technique that I don't think is done a ton anymore, but was effective. And I want to throw out to you for your opinions on it. Is like that starting on a splash or double splash of like character in trouble. Let's turn back the clock a little bit and figure out how they got there. I don't know if I can think of any modern book that has done that I've read, but that was a common old school technique, and I'm interested to hear. It's a common movie technique even to this day. So I'm interested to hear
we've all seen
your
the
thoughts
Bee
on
movie.
that.
I bet you're wondering how I got here. I am not personally a huge fan of that, because I think that there's certainly a place in fiction for dramatic irony, so like where the audience knows what's going to happen even though the characters don't. But I think something like, I don't know, Thor lifting up a spaceship and being crushed by it as he's lifting is not the type of effective dramatic irony. I feel like if you're going to start with something like that, you want it to be something that you can then kind of breadcrumb towards. So instead of it being, I think a good example of this might be, to a warped extent, Radiant Red, where the first thing we see of her is her bringing back that bag that she stole from the bank, and then we kind of get to see the little seeds of how that ended up happening to her. So if it's
good call out.
Yeah. If it's something that you can build up to in an effective and like important way, I think that's a valid entry. But if it's just, here's this cool action scene, don't you want to see that action scene later in the book?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a particularly sophisticated way to go about writing. No.
Absolutely. As I actually hit in my head, like, I remember the modern way that it's done in comics, and it's typically showing you a superhero dying, and then like, how do we get here? And I'm gonna give a shout to a series that we haven't loved, but I think it's the best way it's been done in modern comics, and we really like this, is the way that the Modern Titans run did it with Wally. Because like, yes, we saw the character die and we had to build there, but so did the characters, because it was Wally going back in time to die. So it wasn't necessarily starting at the end in a normal way. It was in a way that really worked and made sense. Where they went after that, but it was a fantastically effective hook.
Oh yeah.
You read those first 2 pages of Titans 1. It's Titans 1, right? It's not 2. Titans 1.
I believe it's Titans 1, yeah. Where Wally comes running in
and
with a bullet wound.
Yeah, you are immediately hooked, and you're like, I need to read until I find out how this happened.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's ways to do it, is what I'll say. But I agree with you that it's not the most effective technique to just be like, okay, where's my cool moment? Okay, let's shove it at the beginning and then go back there. I agree with you fully on that.
Yeah, I think looking to Ghost Machine, the reason that the Exodus book was our favorite is, like you mentioned, the immediately understandable and readable characters and dynamics that make me care about the character. Like, the world is very cool, but I love the dynamics between the two characters that we saw. And that's really what drove my interest in actually picking the book up.
And based on that, let me ask you a question, because I feel like this is becoming more common in comics, and Rook Exodus does it. And I'm interested in your feelings on it, because it is something that allows you to do that, like, start at the latest moment possible. You can move that so far back with this thing, which is putting a blurb at the beginning that gives, like, that exposition information that the people need. So you can start the story at, like, that moment and not need any exposition. Rook Exodus does it. I know a couple other comics to do it that I'm reading right now.
I think Marvel does it a lot, which is super nice. The only real recent Marvel books I've read, like, I don't think it happened in Ultimate Spider-Man, but that didn't really need it because it was completely devoid of context. But Gang War has done it.
Daredevil Gang War,
Yeah. And when I read the Exterminators book, the X-Men book about killing vampires, that did it at the start of each issue. I think that's a really, really, really good idea for a big 2 book. For a book that has a, like, reason that someone would want to read it outside of the story. If it's like, oh, I like the X-Men, I'll pick up this X-Men book. And it gives you that bit of context so you can figure out where you are in this universe. That, I think, is super effective. But for your own, like, creator-owned, self-published, Kickstarter, whatever book, no, absolutely not. You cannot fall on that crutch, in my opinion.
I agree with you mostly. I agree with you on an issue 1. I don't want information that hasn't been given to me before. I really like, I can't remember what book, I think In Hell We Fight did it. Or at least they did like kind of a variation of it. Of where with the like future issues, they explain what happened in the issue right before. Yes. And I think that's really, really effective for 1, if people are picking up a later issue without reading the earlier issues, or 2, it's a month at the earliest. People forget things. So I really like the books that do a little just what you need from the previous issue. Yeah. Of like, now our heroes have found this and they need to, bring it to this person.
Right. Whatever and that's just front matter. If someone doesn't want to read it, they don't have to.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting technique to think about when you're making a book. But I think we're both in agreement that just putting a paragraph at the beginning, even though Rook Exodus does it and we enjoyed that, it's not always the most effective way to deliver your world building.
And Rook Exodus also has the benefit of this, 1, being a preview of it, and 2, being a new number 1 from a highly publicized new publisher written by Jeff Johns.
And illustrated by Jason Payton.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that thing like with the big 2, where there's a reason people are going to come and read it besides just the story and the cover. I think that's going to take us to the end of our Creator Corner. Start as close to the end as possible. Really hit those dynamics and the interesting things about your book right away. Make it approachable, but then spin on that. And for the love of God, don't exposition dump.
Yep. And as we wind to a close, let me ask you, Katie, can you tell our fine viewers at home what we will be pulling for next week's episode?
I sure can. We're going to have a bit of a lighter pull list because I think we're going to have a bit of a heavier back issue review. I don't know what it is yet, but I've been given that clue. So our pulls next week are going to be Batman Offworld number 3, Titans Beastworld number 6, which I think is the conclusion of Beastworld, thrillingly, and Moonman number 1 from Image.
That's right. And just quick shout, we did have a bonus episode come out this past Saturday where we dove into the first volume of Void Rivals as we are kind of getting more invested in the Energon universe. So give that a watch if you're interested in hearing our thoughts. But our back issue review next week will be New Teen Titans Volume 1 by Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
Oh my gosh. What a...
Which is the first 8 issues of the just absolutely famous and lauded,
what a coincidence.
New Teen Titans. You had to get so much work to get there.
The first 8 issues, you say? Bam.
Yes, it's the first 8 issues of that book.
I've got my individualized hard copies.
I own most of them in raw floppies, but not all of them. But
you just holding on to New Teen Titans number 2?
Yeah. I have 1, 2, and then I think like 5, 6.
There he is, Mr. Deathstroke.
Which I guess is half of them. But yeah.
No, I am super excited. This is thrilling. We'll get to see some much better Raven than we've seen in Beastworld.
Yes, that we will. We'll get to see the Teen Titans at their peak. Very early peak. But
that's okay.
Yeah, that's gonna bring us to a full-on close this week. Join us next week. We'll see you then, comic geeks.
Keep it the energy. Energy up. Energy up. Energy
up. Energy up.